All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, and welcome to the Masterclass here on Adobe Live. Thank you so much, Paul and Terry, before that. Great to see you guys this morning, and so glad to be with you here today to continue or finish this sound design project that we've been working on over the last 2 weeks. Now, the last two previous ones, I went over time, and I just got so lost, because I get completely lost in audio. My bad. I'm determined to end on time today. I promise you that. So we have 3 things that we're going to cover, right? Because basically all the sound design is done. I worked on it a little bit again midweek, finished it. It looks and sounds great. Got a couple little things that we want to tweak. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make the bass drop sound, that which if you've been tuning in the last 2 weeks, you know that we have a whole section here in slow-mo where our boxer is kind of disoriented and it's, you're trying to create this tension via sound design. So I'm going to show you how to do that, 2 different ways to do that in Audition. Then we're going to add a couple of global effects to the mix. And then to finish it off, we're going to mix it back and send it over to Premiere, which was where it started in the first place. Make a couple of tweaks there. We'll do some back and forth, and I'll show you the integration and the amazing session integration with Audition and Premiere. A little bit of time remapping on some of the video over there, and then we'll call it a day. And then we will be done with this project. So as always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are watching on YouTube, of course, we've got a chat over there, but the conversation is happening over at behance.net/live. So thanks for those of you on YouTube. Be sure to come over to Behance. And as always, great to see you all. Justin Duncan, how's it going? Tiago, Steve from New Zealand, always great to see you. Munir, thank you so much. All right, Mia, what's happening? Rosemary, Daniel Peterson, of course, the Master Tim, whom you all know and love. All right, so I want to be on time. I want to make sure I don't go over. I'm not going to go over. I will not. I promise. Tim, I promise you. I will end precisely what I'm supposed to. And you'll see my outro screen teeing up the next thing, which of course is the XD Creative Challenge. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so I'm going to switch over to Audition. Switch my screen. And of course, unlike my daily live streams, this is live interactive chat. So I'm watching the Behance chat right in front of me. So I can, oh, sorry, let me get rid of my lower third there. Nice. Way to go, Levine. Bzz, blocking my face. All right. Very cool. Okay. Nadia, very cool. Glad to have you. All right, so let's first start by listening to what we did. And by the way, just to kind of update some of you who maybe didn't catch my stream earlier this week, I basically just cleaned up the remainder of things just to organize everything and relabel a couple things. So that basically involved grouping together like sound effects. So, wherever we use that bright punch, I stacked all of those together. Wherever I used the bright slap sounds, those are all together. The deep punches, the pillows, the whooshes. I tried to group everything together. The reason for that is we're going to do some track level processing, largely some compression and things. And that way I get to use the same type of effect, the same thing, because those like sounds have the same kind of audio characteristics. All right, let's go ahead and play this. I'm going to go full screen here. Probably play it twice because it's so short. I'm going to get myself out of the way there and take a listen. Here we go. One more playback because it's so much fun. All right. So again, the timing, all this stuff, it's really come together. Loving the way this all sounds and looks. But there's one thing that it's missing. So when we go into the slow motion section here, all right? Lena Gonzalez, nice. Thank you so much. Ian Sanderson, you're so nice. Thank you. And Justin, I appreciate the compliment as well. So when we go into the slow motion section, again, last week when we were here, we added that sci-fi electronic high-pitched thing. I rolled off the bass to kind of create that disoriented, right? He's getting clocked in the head. The other guy's getting clocked in the abs. So they're all disoriented, right? He's falling to the ground. But it needs something else. It needs that, like, you're slowing down time, right? So one of the things that you do in sound design is you're trying to create that emotional state, right? It's not just about all the punches and the trying to mimic or Mickey Mouse the physical motion, but it's also the mental state, right? That's part of the art form of it. So we've got that high-pitched whistle in there. What I think would be really effective is right when they go into that first slow-mo punch to the face, if we add that bass drop, which is simply going to be that sound that you know. That, all right? And it's really easy to do, and we're going to do just that. So it's going to go right here. So if I were simulating that right now, it would sound like this. Okay? And it's just gonna add to that tension, right? You know, you can get all kinds of creative with this. Bass drop, I think, is going to work wonderfully. So to do that, we're going to go into the waveform view, and we're going to use something which you've probably not seen before. Maybe you have. So first thing, we're going to create a new audio file. We're going to call this bass drop 2, because I've actually already created one. Click OK on this. All right. And we're going to go up to the Effects menu, and under Generate, you will see, whoops, sorry, clicked out of there. You're going to see something called Generate Tones. So yes, this is one of those things that a lot of people aren't even aware of that Audition has. We have a noise generator, right? So for those of you who are into synthesis and stuff, you can generate all different types of white noise, pink noise, brown noise, etc. A speech generator. I'll let you figure that one out. And then a tone generator, okay? So let's go into tones. Now, the bass drops, which again, you really commonly, and this is not to be confused with because there's also the term bass drop as it relates to like EDM and hip hop, where it actually means the bass and everything else but drums drop out. Yes, but the bass drop in sound design is, and you hear this in like Star Trek and Star Wars and any kind of sci-fi thing. Something comes into landing, boom, slow motion, laser cannon, boom, whatever it is. Bass drops are, by definition, by default, sine waves. So inside the tone generator here, first thing you're going to do is select the waveform shape. So you have sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, square, and inverse sine. Sine wave is what you want. Now, again, there's two methods of doing this. I'm going to show you this way first. So you can actually create the sweep, right? So it's basically like a glissando going from a higher frequency, it's still low frequency, but from a frequency that's here down to something nearly subsonic. Okay, that's the sound that you're used to hearing. So a good bass frequency for a starting point is approximately around 110 hertz. You'll hear it. We'll get to preview it, and I can show you what different frequencies sound like. This defaults to A440. That's just way too high, right? The bass drop has to be, first and foremost, starting in the bass range. So about 110 hertz. Now, I don't want any modulation at all. I don't want this wavering or doing anything. So I've automatically set the modulation depth and rate to 0. I think these may have some settings by default. I changed these earlier. So I'm keeping them at 0 for the purpose of this sound. All right. Now, you see this checkbox here, sweep frequencies. If you don't check that, it will simply create a tone at 110 hertz, which sounds like this. Okay, so that's the starting frequency. But we want it to go. All right, so we're going to enable sweep frequencies, and then you'll see you have a start frequency and an end frequency. Nice. And for that, we're going to go down to around 35 hertz. Now, 35 hertz is in the subsonic range. If you're listening on earbuds, you're not going to hear it. It'll actually feel like it's going into silence. If you're on headphones, you'll probably hear it. If you're in a speaker, if you're in an environment with speakers and you've got a subwoofer, you will both hear and feel it. Now, we could go lower. We could go all the way down to 10 hertz if you want. You can't really hear much below or feel much below 35. And when you get below 35, when you go into the 25, 20 range, now this can actually make people sort of sick, especially if it's prolonged. This is very short. We won't make this more than about 3 to 6 seconds when we do a little stretching here. But 110 to 35 is pretty good. What does that sound like? Let's go ahead and preview it. Mia's feeling it. Lena's feeling it. Steve, oh yes, it's super bassy. Your Bose speaker is bassy by default. Should be fun. Yeah, I mean, it's good. Now again, Tim is saying turn down your subwoofer. I have the amplitude fairly low. You can see I've got it at -18 for that purpose. You don't want subsonics real loud for a number of reasons. So I'm only generating this at -18. Plus, on the master volume, I've even attenuated that an additional almost 7 dB. So we should be okay. This is also where you can select the duration. So again, I'm doing it at about 3 seconds. Now I want it to last longer, but I'm going to use a little creative stretching to do that inside the multitrack. So I have my start frequency, my end frequency. Let's click OK, and there it is. Laura's feeling it. Steve is feeling it. All right. Easy, right? Really cool. So that's one way to do it. Now, before we insert this in the multitrack, when I was doing this the other day, someone was like, well, can you Bezier the points to actually create the curve, the drop in frequency manually? And yes, you can. It was a great question. Love that. So let's just go ahead and save this one. All right, make sure it's going into the right folder here. Punch SFX. All right, stick it in there. Okay. Let's create another new file. All right, and we'll call this bass drop 3. And we're going to go back to generate tone. Now, this time I'm not going to sweep it. I'm just going to keep the continuous 110 tone. Okay, because we're going to Bezier and create that curve and actually be able to manually adjust what frequency level it goes to by hand. Now again, just to kind of give you an idea, this is A440. This is your standard if you've got a tuner, if you play instruments. This is kind of for standard tempered tuning instruments. This is A440. And again, a bass drop. It's too high, right? My glissando is very musical. Too high. You don't want that. Again, if you're curious about, this is a great way sort of to get your ears trained too, by the way. This is what 220 sounds like. Not surprisingly, it's an octave below 440, right? When you double frequency in hertz, you're creating the octave, right? So if I wanted to hear 2 octaves above this, for instance, all right, we could do something like that. Okay, or excuse me, it wouldn't be 660, it would be 880. Duh. All right. Nah, nah, do, do. And then we're going to go to 110. All right, let's go back to 110. Now, again, for those who are curious, if you're trying to create like weird synthy, warbling, vibrating kinds of patches, this is where you can adjust depth and rate. So if I play this back, increase the depth here. I don't know if this is actually going to work. I think you have to stop it. Yeah, those aren't, they don't work in real time. So we're modulating it by 60. You can start to do really kind of cool polytonal things here. We don't want this. So we're going to set both of those to 0. Let's go ahead and generate this tone. Okay. Yes, a little lesson in theory today. Always little random bits, wherever I can, I try and sprinkle those in. Okay. So to do it manually, we're going to go into and I always forget which one it is. I think it's the pitch bender. Yes, pitch bender. Okay. And when you bring up the pitch bender, what you'll see on screen, I'm wondering actually if is there more contrast if I turn it off? Yes. You'll see a Beziered line, right, representing your change in semitones or in pitch, okay? And then you'll see there's a bunch of keyframe handles, right? So this one here, it's telling us we're still at 0, no change to 110 hertz. This one is down 18 semitones. This one is down, 23. And then it maintains approximately, up to around -20, and then it just drops all the way down. So if we were to play what this sounds like, let's wind it back to the beginning here. and then it just drops off into silence. I mean, if you've got a sub right now, this is cranking right there in that section where it's elongated. It's cranking. All right. So that's fine. I don't need to go into total silence though necessarily. So we can adjust that keyframed point if we so desire. It doesn't really matter at the very end. But this is how you can design it manually. Now, by the way, I think I turned this on after the fact. I don't know if the spline or Beziers are on by default. So if we disable that, it becomes linear, right? Nice and linear, which is actually not nice for this kind of a sound because it's going to sound like you're stepping down. Not good. You want it to be splined or Bezier, all right? And then from here, you just determine how soon that happens, right? Now, again, this is in semitones. So we don't want to go too low because then not only are we in those kind of dangerous subsonics, but you're just not going to hear it anyway. You know, in this case, around 20 to 24 semitones down, we can still hear a little bit of it, and you're definitely going to feel it. You can feel it in your bones. So let's take a listen here. Right, a little bit faster, right? Or we could slow it down even more. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to get there, right? And you can also add more points as you go, all right? So see this, we've elongated it a little bit. Ooh. It's making me a little uneasy. All right. Yes, Akin, what's happening? Thank you, Mia. You could listen to this stuff all day. All right, again, be careful. 20 to 30 hertz, very dangerous. All right, I don't want anyone to get hurt here. So just please use wisely. All right. So let's say that we liked this particular, Bezier curved version. Go ahead and apply it, and it does it. All right. Now, for those of you who love to visually kind of understand what audio is doing, if you open up the frequency analysis panel, all right, and watch this, now you'll see it start to drop off. Right here it goes. We're also in logarithmic here, where you want to be. All right. The other thing that I noticed the other day, if we go to the bass drop that we created, where it's creating that, it's creating the sweep automatically. You can see that right before it gets to that 35 hertz level, it's a really consistent, very narrow bandwidth of tone. So this one really, there's a little bit more frequencies adjacent in the manual version. The automatic version done with the tone generator is a little bit more clean and is probably going to work better in the context of the multitrack. Now, whatever works. I'm not saying don't use one over the other. You have options, but I like the sound of that one a little bit better. So now let's go into the multitrack. Let's grab bass drop 2, and I'm going to place it on this explosion track. All right, right about here. And all right, and there's the hit. All right, let's go back to our video panel here and drag this in. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong tool. All right, and we could snap it right to the marker, but I'm thinking I actually want it to start just, just a little bit before. All right, again, we're in hours, minutes, seconds down here, so we're just a few milliseconds before that marker where it starts, where that real punch, slow-mo punch comes into play. Now, already we see that it's not lasting very long, right? We only made this 3 seconds. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use our clip time stretching, which remember is this little triangle in the upper left and right corners. And the default method for this is to real-time adjust time duration without affecting pitch, right? That's exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to take this and I'm simply going to drag this out till just before he kind of goes into that resting mode. And maybe I'll do a slight little fade out on this. Again, you've got the ability here, grabbing this non-destructive fade handle to adjust the fade. All right, just so that we don't get like a weird little click at the end there. All right, so we've adjusted the duration. Just to verify that, I'm going to click on the clip, go into properties, and just as I said, you can see real-time monophonic, stretched 192%, but again, pitch is unaffected. So it's still going to be boom. We're just now doing it over 6 seconds instead of 3. All right, so let's wind back. Let's take a look. I might need to drop the amplitude of this just a little bit. I'll take it down maybe about 2 dB. All right, and let's wind it back and play, and here we go. Ooh, ooh. Did I just do an overbite in excitement there? I was like, the heck was that? I was excited. Mia's saying, I'm a bass player. Ooh, me too. And I've tried to record and drop C. At different points, I've lost my audible sound because it was too low to be picked up by Pro Tools. Pro Tools limitation. Yeah, no. I'm curious. So tell me what kind of bass you play, Mia. So my main bass is and has been for over 30 years, a Rickenbacker. It's the same one that Paul McCartney played in the Magical Mystery Tour Sgt. Pepper era. Later in the Wings era too, although technically that's a 4001 and mine's a 4003 V63. So I love the Rick. And then I have a 5-string fretless Warwick, which was, I think it was like the Jack Bruce model, it's beautiful. It's Bubinga wood. It's very gorgeous and very heavy, and it has active electronics and was very expensive, and I almost never touch it. I don't really use fretless that much. I like it, but again, that same, it's got the, it has the low B, and it's, just not most of the music that I'm doing these days doesn't really require that. So I hear what you're saying. Fender P-Bass, classic. Can never go wrong with that. Nice. Okay. All right, so we've got our drop bass in here. I think it sounds wonderful. All right. Any comments on that? We like that. Nice. Laura saying, wow, Warwick hardcore. Yes. Oh, yeah. In fact, if you download the Loopology libraries, right, which I've showed you here, that's where we got our sound effects from. There's also 5,000 loops in there, all of which I created. There's a whole series. You can find a whole series of me playing various bass lines on that Warwick fretless. It's good. And it's like, I think it's in the Funk and Rock collection. I think it's Funk and Rock 2, because there's 2 different rock collections, and you'll find it's either under like a fretless bass or just like a hardcore bass. Some of it's distorted, but I'm playing on that low B and doing a lot of walking lines and things, and it's just dirty and gritty and growly. Really growls, that bass, which is why I like it. Okay, so now that we've got all of this done. Everybody likes it. Akin, noise, Tim, noise, Steve, excellent, wonderful. Okay. Oh, and me, you've got the jazz too. I actually prefer the jazz, believe it or not. I went to Berkeley, and Berkeley College of Music is where I graduated from, and a lot of friends who played jazz over P-bass. I think that's where I kind of fell more in love with the jazz over the precision, but precision is so classic. I mean, Carol Kay, everybody played a P-bass. Okay. So now this is where we're going to do just a little bit of kind of global mixing, all right? So I was saying on the first day that we started all of this that because we're pulling sounds from, some of them I recorded, some were from the Loopology library, others were from the BBC royalty-free library. They all have slightly different ambient or ambience characteristics, right? They don't all have the same kind of ambience. So I kind of want to unify that a little, just a bit, just to kind of put everything in the same environment. So to do that, I'm going to create a new reverb bus where I can just kind of place everything into the same space, a very small, not super reflective, but small ambient kind of room effect, just so that, the hits and the and the like all of those have the same slight ambient reflection to them. And it's just going to kind of glue all those hits together. It sounds good right now, but it's just going to, it'll make it even better. So to do that, once again, we'll go up to the track menu here, Multitrack. We're going to add a stereo bus. Okay, it comes in as bus A. We'll call this ambience. We'll call this ambient V for ambient verb. All right, and let's grab our studio reverb, place it there. And let's start with the preset. So I'm going to go to Room Ambience 2. I tend to like this one a lot. Now I'm going to use sends for this, and I'm going to send everything pre-fader, right? So pre-fader means that the signal gets sent to this bus before the fader, meaning that I could turn those punch tracks all the way down, but the reverb, the reflection, the ambience will still be there. That's exactly what I want because we're just going to send just enough, right? I'm not concerned. This is not like a long decay, just enough so that they all have that global ambience together. So just looking at this, I'm thinking, all right, probably decay, make it a little bit smaller, maybe around 1200 milliseconds. High frequency cut, we'll take that down a little. Definitely going to want some damping, but I'll need to listen. Dry signal is going to be 0. Wet's going to be 100%. All right? Okay, we'll close this for the moment. So now what we do is we go through, and on each available send, we're going to enable and send those tracks to that bus. So that I'm able to kind of audition the sound, let's just make a selection here, and this should kind of give us an idea. So let's start with this bright punch. All right, there's nothing on here, so we're going to go to send 1. Ambient V. It's always default to post fader. Let's send it pre-fader. And then here's our level control. So now that this is soloed and looping, oh, and let me turn off all the other effects too. I don't want to hear any of those. We should be able to hear what this kind of sounds like. So we're going to start off slow and we'll add more and more. All right. And I'm going to pull up the reverb as well because we're probably going to make some tweaks to that. All right. So right now we should just be hearing the those top level ab punches. Okay. You can start to hear it. We'll go a little more extreme. Okay, so it's a little too bright. So this is where some damping is going to help. Like that. Diffusion. Maybe kill some of the early reflections. Okay, now you'll notice you also have not only a level, we're going to turn that down, we don't need that much of it. So let's turn it off. I mean, there's already some ambience in there. Let's turn it on. Just kind of brings it alive a little bit more. Now, the other thing we want to do, remember, we added some of these tracks anew, so I want to make sure that all of these are at -3. So I'm going to do that ahead of time. Now, what I was just saying was you'll notice that you have a separate pan control on each of these sends. So if I wanted to pan the ambience of those hits into a different place in stereo, you can do that as well. For the ambience, we're not going to do that. And again, it's not going to matter so much. We're just trying to put things in the room. So realistically, even though this is a stereo reverb on a stereo bus, because we're sending it pre-fader, it won't be affected by the pan control here. So it's just going to give us kind of a nice, again, a glued together sense of all of these things. All right. Let's come over to the next one. Now this one on send 1, we already have that going to the reverb for something. So let's go to send 2, ambient. All right, let's play this back. Okay, let's bring in 3. All right, we got to stop it. Let's put this one on here, ambient V, pre-fader. Go to this one. I'm just going to turn it on for all these, and then we can start to affect them as necessary. All right, here's another whoosh. So again, we'll go to send to. All right, another punch here. Ambient V. All right. Now the foley sounds, I don't know that we need those so much. We'll probably leave them and we'll leave the explosion out of it. So it's really just all the hits, okay? So let's start. Let's just kind of go with a nominal value around -9. A little less on the whooshes because they've already got some ambience. Let's take it off. So now is no verb. So it sounds good, right? But you can tell like it's all different sound effects. When it's all in this ambient space, it's like a glue. I don't know if it's coming through on the stream. You just have to trust me here if you're not hearing it. This is also like nerd level, you know. This is again, these are those little tweaks that separate really good sound design from like good sound design. How do you homogenize the ambience for all those different sound effects libraries? Stick it in a small, very slightly reflective space, diffused accordingly based on the brightness and the content there, and it's just going to kind of glue everything together. So we're done. This is done. This sounds good. Okay. Now the one other thing that we might consider doing here, and let me just check the questions. All right. Ian Sanderson, sounding pretty good, but you can hear the difference. Yes, they are different, but it doesn't matter, right? Because as you're watching, you're not going to feel any difference. You're going to be paying attention to that. So you're hearing them isolated. When it's all together, again, with the crowd and everything else going, it feels baked in. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind is that, and we won't do all of the tracks here, but to kind of unify the attack of many of these hits, this is where we would use some compression. And that's why I stacked all of the like sounds together so that we can use the same type of compression on each track rather than having to compress each file separately at the clip level, which would just be painful and take way too long. All right. So, okay, I'm just checking here. All right. Nice. Okay. Just looking here. Oh, everybody's talking about music. Very nice. Yeah, Nadia's asking, how many people that work on sound design play a musical instrument? You know, I knew a bunch. So I got into this again when I was in college. And, I mean, everybody I knew, of course, was a musician. But, you know, the nice thing is I always kind of liken timing and things in kind of a musical way. So even if you don't play, but you have like the sense of timing, that's what it's about, right? You are trying to find the rhythm of how certain sounds go together. And, you know, in the case of, if you remember, if you were watching last week, where I used one of these foley tracks where it's like the metal plate, wherever that is. I don't remember where that is right now. Somewhere in here. Where's that metal plate thing? Oh, no, that's Foley Spring. Is this it? Have I just missed it? Oh, I'm all zoomed weird. Here it is, sheet metal. Right, so we did this wobbly sheet metal thing. I mean, it's not exactly vibrating at the same rate. It's not exactly vibrating at the same rate as his abs, nor when he hits that banister and you see a little bit of the shake of the vinyl. But again, you know, your brain perceives, it hears that, and then when the visual comes on, you have this wow, 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 and then you see this other thing in slow motion. Your brain goes, oh yeah, those are the same, blah, 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 and it kind of modulates them together for you, which is why it's just about creativity. So yeah, so kind of feeling the rhythm of those things absolutely helps for better sound design. Okay, let's turn all this other stuff back on again. All right, and we'll turn on those effects as well. And let's just do a little bit of compression on some of these hits, and then we're going to mix this over to Premiere. All right, so let's start. We'll go into our effects section here. So because we're using compression, we're going to use compression as an insert effect, right? So whereas for things like reverb and delay, sometimes compression, especially if you're grouping like drum tracks and you're sending them to a separate bus, there you might do a global compression. But typically, when you add compression, it's known as an insert effect, meaning that on the track, if you imagine the track fader, right? So the sound comes in here. This is where you can adjust things like invert the phase. That's why I say polarity reverse here. Comes in, and the first place it hits is the effect send return, right? Meaning that you can place an effect in here. Typically, this would be something like compression or limiting, EQ, maybe a delay-based effect like something like flange or whatever. But it means that it sends it to the effect and then sends it right back to the track exactly where it is, okay? So compression is done this way, typically. So we're going to use an inline inserted compressor. So let's just go with one of the default ones here. I would use some of my third-party ones, but for those of you watching, I want you to be able to kind of replicate this if you so desire. So one of the ones that I like, we've got a whole bunch in here. I like the tube modeled compressor. It's simple. It has nice metering. If you understand compression, it's very easy to use because it's just standard. So you have your input level here. You have your gain reduction meter here, and then you have the 5 standard controls: threshold, output gain or makeup gain, ratio, and attack and release. That's it. And you got a couple presets to get you started. So before we even do anything, we want to go for punches. Again, we're trying to kind of emphasize but also equalize the dynamics of the punches. Let's do a ratio of about 4:1. Now we don't want too fast of attack because then we're going to cut off that smack of the transient. So I'm thinking probably around 30 milliseconds for an attack. And then we want a fairly quick release. So let's do about 150 milliseconds. All right. And we're going to have to adjust the threshold as we listen back. So again, let's go ahead and I'll solo those initial hits right here. And let's play this back and take a listen and see what we can do. Oh, and let me mute the ambience. Okay, probably adjust the threshold a little bit more. Okay, making those a little long. A little bit of makeup gain. Too much. Okay, without. Got to speed up the release a little. Just the attack a little bit. Okay, and I'm backing off on the threshold just to give it a little more breathing room. See, these are already pretty dynamic, and the dynamics work in this case, but we want to control some of it because, again, some of the hits, just by the nature of them, they're just a little too loud, which you could go in and individually adjust clip levels. The compressor is going to kind of take care of most of that for us. All right, so let's add in this second one. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. All right, pretty good. And again, I'm gonna drop this maybe a dB or so right there. And then let's just see. I like the whooshes being really dynamic. All right, so maybe some of these. Maybe now I can even pump up the volume of these a little bit. All right. Let's hear this stuff right here. It's funny hearing the hits isolated, right? Because now when we're hearing all the stacking of those sound design, you start to get lost in it. You're like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. No, you're just hearing a single isolated sound. Now this one, I just want about a 2-to-1. And this is a season to taste kind of thing. But and by the way, if you don't understand compression, I highly recommend you check out other live streams on my YouTube channel, which is Jason Levine Video. You can find that on YouTube, of course, on all of our Premiere Pro Facebook pages and such. But I have a series called Audio 101. Episode 8 is how to set a compressor, and I describe and talk about how to use these things and all the various parameters. One key element when setting compression, I can't get into the whole thing now because I don't want to divert this, and we only have 14 more minutes, and I will end on time. But when you have your threshold set properly, which meaning that you are exceeding that threshold so that you're actually hitting the ratio that you have in there, so you are in fact compressing, you use the output or makeup gain such that when you enable or disable the effect, if the volume is the same, in other words, it doesn't get louder, it's just the dynamics are controlled, but it has the same apparent loudness, you've set the compressor correctly. Now, as I did with the bright punches, I actually gave it a little more makeup gain to give it a little bit more of that punch. Compressors, by nature, are amplifiers. So you can use this just to amplify a track as well without even adjusting the dynamics. So, but again, when you're disabling or enabling it and you hear it compressing, you clearly hear it like squishing those transients, but the actual output volume, the perceived level is the same, you've done it correctly, okay? So that's basically what I did here, and I just gave it about a half a dB more, just a little bit, okay? So I think that's probably good for the compression here. So let's go ahead, let's wind this back. Maybe, let me just take a listen to these whooshes and see if they need... Oh, sorry. I mean, I kind of like them as they are. Again, and they're going to provide a little bit of color here because they're so dynamic. All right, now one thing that we can do is play around a little bit with the panning on these. All right, so technically, let's see. Yeah, I guess that is kind of centered. That doesn't really need to be left or right. Okay, so this one right here, he's going from like right to left. So if we just wanted to add, you know, again, just get a little creative, we can take this blue line here as your pan line. I'm going to set 2 keyframes here. And let's just start it about 38% on the right, and we'll have it end about 38% on the left. Now again, this is so fast, you know, it's more about perception, but you'll hear it moving. You can also hear, because it's moving, right? You're actually hearing the ambience stays kind of on the other side. So it just creates this kind of neat stereo thing. You can see we did one right there too. And this is going the opposite way, right? Pretty cool. Hold on, what's that one now? So that's a non-hit. So maybe that one again, maybe we just start it kind of on the right side. Just pull the whole thing down. Let's even do a little more extreme, around 50. All right. And then have it go to like the center. because he ends in the center. All right, cool. All right, let's check out whoosh number 2. I posted a screenshot the other day on Wednesday for Timeline Tuesday. I'd taken the screenshot on Tuesday and forgot to post it till Wednesday. So I said, well, in lieu of Timeline Tuesday, I'll call this Whoosh Wednesday. All right. Now you can actually see, if you look at the meters here, this sound, it's actually already got a little bit more on the right channel, and he's starting that hit on the right side, so we don't need to do anything there. That one's good. Now again, we don't have to do anything with this one, but it could be kind of nice to start it from the right and just very quickly, you know. Again, it's so fast. It just adds a little more dimension. Let's go to this one. That one has already got a little bit of stereo going on there. I'm going to leave that. Let's see, another one. Yeah, and that will just keep that centered because, again, then you're going to really feel the impact. That's when we get into our slow-mo bit. All right. So before we mix it down, let's play back one more time. Nice. Okay, so now we're ready. All right, so we're going to save this first. Let's call this 6D. All right, 6D. Actually, let's just call this 7. Okay. No. All right, so we save the session. All right, now we can do this in one of two ways. I've already got Premiere open. So technically I can in fact mix this back. Now this is the mix that I was working on the other day. I actually already placed this inside the multitrack in here. I'm just going to change the UI for a second just so I can give myself a little bit more room down here. So we can in fact mix this and send it directly to Premiere. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we're going to go up to Multitrack, export to Adobe Premiere Pro. All right, and we will call this, I mean, we could just leave the name as it is. That's the name of the session, all right? Now, we can do one of three things. We can each export the stems, so that would give us each track mixed, right? So rendered with all the effects and everything in those tracks accordingly. That's really nice because that would give us flexibility to remix on the Premiere side if we wanted to do that. But I'm going to keep all the mixing in Audition. I don't need to send stems. So in this case, I'm simply going to mix down the session to a stereo file because it's a stereo multitrack. If this were done in 5.1, we could send a 5.1 file. We could send all three if we wanted to and have it open in Premiere. All right. So I think that looks good. Let's send this. I want to make sure this goes into the right folder. So I don't want it to go on the desktop. I want it to go in here. And yeah, I'll just place it at the root inside of there. All right. And click export, and it exports, goes to Premiere. Where do we want it? In a new audio track? No, let's go ahead and stick it in Audio 2, click OK, and just like that, now we have our mix. Sweet, super cool, okay? So now that we're in Premiere, I've got the other one muted as you can see. Let's go ahead and, here, I'll shrink this up. We don't need to see that one. Let's go ahead and play it back. Okay. Now you're watching this going, okay, that's awesome, but you know, you run out of footage at the end there. It would be kind of nice if you could kind of slow that down because you still hear the music and that high pitched thing. It would be, and also the crowd noise cuts out. Okay. So this is where I'm going to show you the supreme cool and magic of the integration between Premiere and Audition. So first of all, just to prove a point, let's go ahead and close everything here. All right. And close this. We don't need that either. No to bass drop 3. All right. So back in Premiere, because I mixed this down from Audition and it tags everything with metadata, notice also that all of our markers are in here. I don't know if you're seeing those pink markers in the file. So all those markers that we were timing all the events to, they're all there. If I right click on this clip and I choose Edit Original, this is the same Edit Original that you know and love from all the Adobe apps. This is now going to allow me to not only open Audition, but then it's going to ask me, do you want to just edit the 2-track stereo mix, or do you want to open the whole session that created that mix? So we want to open the session. Let's go ahead and click OK. And there it is. What? Yes. Awesome. So what did I say I want to do? Well, first and foremost, I want to take the crowd noise and we want to expand that to be as long as that sci-fi sound. And maybe we'll even do a little fade out too. All right. So we'll grab the edges of the crowd here. All right. And let's just do a little slight fade out like that. Same on this one down here too. Okay, so let's listen to this. All right. And I'll fade out that sci-fi effect as well. Okay, all right. Okay, actually I don't even need that because I kind of like the way that sounds. So maybe I'll have these kind of fade out and that'll just dissipate. So it'll leave the tail, the reverb tail on there. All right. Now, because this is a multi-track, I can effectively overwrite the one that's there or just create a new instance of the mix, which is what I would typically do. So I'm going to resave this session as 7A. All right. And we're going to do the same thing that we did before. Let's go into Premiere, just make sure we're at the beginning here. All right, back to Audition, Multitrack, export to Premiere, 3 minutes, session, stereo, export. All right. Notice how freaking fast it happens. Okay. All right, we're back here. I don't know why it didn't just ask me. Why did it not ask me to put that in the multitrack? That's a good question. Why didn't it? Export to Premiere Pro, mixdown, 7A, stereo, open in Premiere, export. Yes, overwrite it. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I didn't do it the first time. Audio 3, yes, okay. So now, as you can see, if we look at our tracks down here, we have the new mix in there, and I'll color code these so you can see them better. Let's mute track 2. There's track 3. Give this a new color. Here's our final, and we'll label this in teal, okay? All right, now the audio continues, but we need to make that video continue. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to extend and slow motion that last hit to fit the duration of the video. So very quickly, C, cut. All right, I'm gonna make a new clip right here. I'm now going to right click on this little FX badge and go into time remapping speed, which is now going to allow me to adjust the duration of this clip. So I can simply drag the little speed handle here so that it fits the duration of our audio, which is going to be approximately 31%. All right, maybe down even to 30. All right. Now, if I just go ahead and play this back right now. The slow-mo looks okay, but it's a little blocky, right? Okay, first thing, hold on, let me just get my effects here, do a little video transition, quick dissolve. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, I will do this. I don't like, what? Stupid cross dissolve, go! Yes, okay. Right click, speed duration. We're going to use not frame sampling, optical flow. This is going to give you smooth, creamy smooth, beautiful looking slow motion. We want to render that. Optical flow, to look good, you got to render it out. So here I did it. Here we go. We're gonna roll with this. I'm out of time. Check it out, fans. Let's watch it full screen. Look, No weird, jagged. It's smooth. Yes. The magic of optical flow. Right? Could you see the difference? Everyone can see the difference. Okay, very nice. All right. Akin, Mohammed, Munir, Tim, Steve, Kosaboom, everyone who's chimed in, thank you so much for watching. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. So remember, of course, you'll be able to watch the replay later. We did some amazing stuff with this, and you just saw now the magic going back and forth between Premiere and Audition, as well as the ability to slow the clip down. I went from frame sampling to optical flow to kind of correct that. Yeah, seeing the frames chugga 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 along. Now it's just smooth and beautiful. So until next week, we'll be back talking about some video workflows. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.